the Pondy Lit Fest. Today we have the privilege to have with us Dr. Sanjay Kumar Manjul. He is the Joint Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, and for the common man, it is under his direction at the Sinoli excavations that the famous chariot was excavated. So, Dr. Manjul, welcome and thank you very much for accepting to talk to us. At the outset, you are an archaeologist, and I want to ask you a very basic question. With the tools of archaeology at our disposal, what is it that we have excavated in our past, and what do we learn from our excavations? And is there something that we have not yet told from what we have found? And is there yet to know from our past, from the various excavations that you do?
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me for the debate or some questions about the excavations and other things related with the excavation. Basically, excavation is always a mysterious one, because we don't know what is coming up in every day, in one after another day. So every excavation having its own importance. The previous excavation may complement with this excavation, but this excavation always, or the recent excavation or current excavation, always having its own interpretation. And before the excavation, particularly, we have to be planning the various manner for understanding of the grey area which has not been done or which has not been covered earlier. Like in if you see the Sinoli excavation or in the Rakhigarhi excavation which we are doing at present, we have chosen mound number 1 and mound number 3 and then burial site. Why? There is other mounds also, 6-7 mounds is there in the Rakhigarhi itself. But we have chosen a particular mound, particular area for excavation, because we have done the whole recce of the mound and then try to mark it out the potential area where some new evidences maybe or might be coming up. So we have chosen a mound number 3. Now you already seen that the excavation, there is huge brick structure along with the mud brick structure is coming up, but that has the similar kind of evidence is not reported earlier in any of the mound. So that's a very interesting point. How to chose that area, how to point out those area and what is the objective behind that of excavation. The mound number 1 earlier, the very clearly mentioned by earlier excavator that area may be the industrial area. So some of the unfinished beads of semi-precious stone beads found there in the cluster. That's a semi-finished one. That's not finished bead. So that shows maybe this area having some industrial activity. Now we try to understand whether that unfinished bead manufactured there itself or that is brought from the other area, because the all semi-precious stones are not available in this area. There is no quarry at all in this area. So they bought from possibly the Gujarat region, another region also. So they bought unfinished one, or they finished here itself, or they bought the finished one with a trade to sell out here in the finished one. So we got the microchips here. So that shows that they bought unfinished one and then clean it up here, and then hole etc. done according to the demand of that area, and then so these are the small clue indicates the whole intangible intangible value or intangible story of that thing. So that's one thing. Another, why archaeological digging is necessary. Particularly the historical phase, we know many things because we have the inscription, we have the script, we have many things written, and then oral tradition, because it's a close one. We have lot of tradition continue in the today itself in everywhere, but in the proto-historic period or the prehistoric period, we don't have any such literary evidence, contemporary one, maybe written later on or maybe replicated later on. Why I am saying replicated one? Because the tradition of everywhere, the one manuscript, if that is deteriorate or they damage, they just replicate another one. Okay. And maybe add something in the next generation also. So this tradition is so old tradition we have in everywhere of writing manuscript. So that manuscript is written in modern time, but the legacy is the old legacy. So that is we have the tradition at present. So that manuscript is also very important for understanding of the past, which has we know that there is no written script or nothing is there in writing to correlate. But yes, we have the writing portion somehow in our manuscript also. Some part coming from the tradition itself. So that's important to understand the intangible part of our culture through excavated remains, also correlation with the traditional manuscript and the continuity of the culture, and also the oral tradition which has not been written anywhere. So that's important.
So this is a question I had also asked Dr. Satya, and I will ask you also, because oral tradition, to what extent do we take it as evidence, to what extent do we take it as corroboration, to what extent do we say it can just be actually just a tradition that is unrelated to the happenings? What is the value of oral tradition in terms of especially preserving continuity?
Yes, in everywhere. If you see the whole span of the length and breadth of the country, even the South India and North India, the similar type of tradition is continued in everywhere. And also sometime the linguistic, if you say the words, the little distortion or little the local tongue, the changes of tongue is there in. And also if you see the similar type of material like pestle and beads, or the technology is still the same, the material is still same, the pot, the uses of pot is still same. Even in the excavation of Harappan or the pre-Harappan person, the continuity is there in everywhere. Even if you see the painting and then making process and the technological part is almost same at this, even in the development of the whole rocket science. After the rocket science, the technology is same. Nothing is actually nothing is the core technology is remains same. So that's a very interesting part for understanding of ethnography or ethno-archaeological aspect to the material culture which we are digging at the site, and also the similar type of material culture you can see in the village, in the nearby village sometime, and also the and other thing like the faunal remains. or uh, the house pattern, or in the food. If you see the similar kind of food tradition you also see in the village, and then a similar kind of material we are tracing in the excavation itself. So that correlation for understanding of the uses, correlation of understanding of the lifestyle of a particular time and the present time is crucial for understanding of intangible aspect or lifestyle of the particular time period.
So when you mention the word intangible, and when we think of the science of archaeology, the common man will be comfortable because with archaeology we think that everything is actually in fact tangible. So you are going into a space where you are going to make intelligent extrapolations, and that will typically give avenues for people to say this interpretation. How do you there will be various views and there will be debate. But in your opinion, do you think that we should still go ahead and discuss the intangible and invite the debate rather than just not do the bridge between the tangible and intangible?
Yes,
We should
it's
invite
a
the debate.
very good question. Without the interpretation, there is no value of that data. Data must be interpreted. Otherwise, you cannot understand anything about the culture. Culture developed as a tradition, as a practice. What we are getting in a tangible manner, it's only a friction. But that friction can tell something about the intangible thing. So if we excavate one house plan, within the house plan there is some pot, there is some beads also, there is some portion is very clean, having the floor or very well made floor. Some portion we are getting the collapse roof portion also. So that what that tell that the construction method of entire house plan, the uses of that also, whether that has some hearth or chulha for making something, or we are getting some outside of hearth apart from the house plan. So that very good if you see and try to correlate with the present house plan and all that in the that tell you the very good story about that, the people where they live, whether they whole day time devote in the outside of the house. The house is very small, but the open area is larger than a house. Only some ladies or some child can go inside for some time, but always they are in the outside. So the understanding of house plan, without the understanding of open area, you cannot understand the entire whole thing of that aspect. So that's the open area, and then house plan, the closed area. Both are very, very important. Likewise, even in the music, the tali and khali, both are important. Otherwise, you cannot understand the music. So life is the music. The culture is the music. So you have to see the rhythm of entire thing, and if you see the rhythm, the blank portion is very, very important, and the tangible portion is also important. So both correlation with both the things, you cannot understand the whole the lyrics of the life or lyrics of the culture.
It's interesting that you use words like lyrics and music pertaining to the science of archaeology, because actually, if it's human beings we are talking about, and if you do not include that aspect, it becomes very dry and very unrelatable. So thank you for that insight. And now, when we talk about the Harappan civilization, I'm using the term Harappan throughout. I will not move to Saraswati's. I'll just use Harappan. We always, whenever we go to, there are phases that are talked about. So archaeologically, what are the phases that demarcate each phase of the Harappan civilization? And also, within a phase, is it safe to say that this happened during the phase, or within that it is important to make subdivisions of times in order to understand even micro things within a phase better? Or the slab is big, but within that there are nuances. So which are how do you define the phases archaeologically?
Okay, what we are doing to divide into the phase according to the changes of material culture. Changes of the material culture means there is the agriculture or the grains, whatever we are, and the quantity also, the change of architectural style, the change of the trade and commerce, if any, at the moment, and the correlation with the dates, scientific dates. That has been determined as per the layer and as per the strata we are getting in the excavation. Like in the early Harappan, we are getting some typical type of pottery which has not been continued in the mature Harappan phase. But in the mature Harappan phase, sometime there is a lot of new thing introduced, the new technology introduced, the script has its own characteristic in the mature phase. The seals and ceilings came out, and also the weight and measures, etc. in the mature phase. And if you go to the late phase, there is little changes in the late phase also, like in the pottery style or in the other standardization of weight and measures, and also the construction style, etc. So that has been determined as per the strata we are getting in the excavation, and the very scientifically segregation of each and every material which we are getting in the excavation in particular strata. So that the quantity analysis and the scientific technological analysis, and that include everything, every scientific analysis, like in the faunal remains or in the botanical remains or in the pottery style or in the construction style or in the weight and measures and in the other material like precious material or semi-precious stones, etc., etc. So in the holistic manner, we try to understand whether the culture of the first phase having particular type of lifestyle, and the second phase having a particular type of lifestyle. If in the second phase having some kind of foreign material also coming from the tape, that also indicate the interaction with the other culture or other distant culture also. So that's obviously that also indicates your trade and commerce, etc. But in the early phase, if we are not getting that type of material in the early phase, that means there are limitations with the nearby itself. They may be based on the local material or local things. So that is a very good indicator for understanding of the development or understanding of a decline of the culture, understanding of diffusion of the culture with the other cultures nearby or in the distant culture. So these indicators marked in the excavation, then we determine that this is the one phase of the culture, this is second or third, fourth, or whatever the culture continuity.
So now, when we talk of ancient India, obviously there are two predominant points that occupy and saturate the narrative. One is the question of invasion, and the other is the question of script. Was it a script? Was it a language? Was it symbolism? Was it sound? Will we ever find a continuous script? What more will it reveal once we decipher the script? And also the whole matter about invasion, no matter papers are written, proofs are published, but there is always this this aspect. So I want you to I want your view on this, based on your work and your, your specialization, and then move away from that. So that, but we have to handle this. We cannot talk about the ancient times without handling the problem of the script and the question of the invasion.
First question about the invasion of Aryans, etc. First, we always taught about the invasion that the 1400 BC or around the Hittite, and they came with the iron and invaded here and resettled, and everything is changed. The basic point of that, first the chariot, second is horse, third is weapons. So now why? Because in every excavation we don't have that type of physical evidence present here. Now there is no point at all because we got the chariot, weapons, etc. in the excavation in Sonoli in 2100 to 1900 BCE. So there is no point at all. If you see the map in the net and everywhere, the chariot came around 1200 or 1300 BCE in India, all this. But now it's a just a reverse.
So that is
one.
the significance of your find.
Yes.
So, yes.
So now there is no debate at all of invasion, etc. of anywhere. And the DNA also very clearly indicated that these people are indigenous. So there is no point at all. Now debate is over. Now debate. And when you come to the your second point about script. Yes, it's a long debatable question for understanding of phonetic value of the script. Lot of claims now came out about the decipherment of the script by the various scholars, either in the phonetic of Sanskrit language and the other language like Santhal and all that. There is a lot of claim for decipherment of script, but yet it's a very difficult to say about the phonetic value of the script at present. But yes, there is no war. We are very hopeful that we will do something about that. So I just try to explain the why we are not able to decipher that script in formed manner, because we are taking the whole script of 700 year or 800 year in one chunk. But within that Harappan script, there is evolution on that. So if you see the early seals, or so there is no script at all. The small seal, maybe the pendant seal, having some symbols only. And then if you just after that, after maybe the 50 years or 100 years, some another seal we got even in the Binjore excavation which we have done in Pakistan border. That's one of the Harappan site. We have very good noted down the evolution of script and evolution of seals also. So in the second phase, seals having some symbols, the bigger one, the multiple symbols, but there is no script at all. But the next phase, we got some animal figurines, but there is no script at all. So in the next phase, we got the script and the animal figure along with one seal. Then in the next phase, the late phase, having animal is totally segregated, only script is there. So within that script in the last phase, there is no symbolism is also there, not symbol. The pictorial portion is already gone. So the last phase seal is very, very important to understand the letter script. how converted into maybe the different medium, like in the palm leaf and other leaf which is perishable at all. So that conversion into the different kind of material, culture of writing, so that has to be studied properly. Otherwise, it's very difficult to decipher the phonetic value. So we try to understand in the now excavation. The earlier excavation, there is no segregation of the early seal and late seal, and also all are Harappan seal. But now we try to understand the late phase of seal, and then a middle phase of seal, and then early phase of seal. So that methodology has to be adopted by for the decipherment of the script or the continuity of the script. So if somebody one thing is very important. If we have the everything continuity, like the traditional continuity, the without the continuity of the language, nothing to be continued, cannot be continued. So maybe we have to see the continuity in our own languages, the phonetic value.
Okay.
So otherwise, if you see the all terracotta figurines and other even the house pattern, the burial system, etc. We have the tradition. So that has the continued, but the language didn't. How? So we are correlating the script with the Mesopotamian and other. So it's not possible to see the entire continuity of in other language.
So, but again, this is again one of those questions that always arises when you talk of script and language, and always the question of dating the Rigveda. And we know the sounds of the Rigveda, and we know that it was orally transmitted and finally actually written down way later. So, with relation to the Harappan civilization, and with relation to this text that has been preserved so perfectly in these various forms of encryptions that we know, where is the script and where is the sound and where is the language that the Harappan spoke? Like, how can you just position the Rigveda in this whole context?
It's a really very difficult question to understand the Rigveda with the civilization of Harappan civilization, which is the earliest civilization of this subcontinent. But yes, it's a true. We have very much continuity of the tradition, the Vedic tradition, which is prevailing at this moment also with in day-to-day life. Whether we are adopting any other many things apart, we have that tradition continue in particularly our in last rituals, which has not been changed. The lifestyle, you may be some adopting the Vaisnavite and the Shaivite or other sect also, but if you see the last ritual, that has the same kind of ritual in everywhere. So in the last ritual, you always offer the Indra, the heaven. Why? Because it's a deep rooted. After stopping the worship of Indra, still in the last ritual you continue the Indra worship. Why? Because it's a deep rooted in our and the last ritual you afraid to change that ritual. In the lifestyle you are in having the lot of different belief. But in the last ritual you remain the same. So that's a very important point for understanding of our deep rooted culture, and then the tradition which is already narrated in the Vedas, and we are doing the same type of culture. If you correlate the Harappan society or Harappan civilization, everywhere you got the many thing which you very clearly relate with the Vedic tradition particularly. For example, in Binjore excavation, we got a certain ritualistic area for the first time of any of the Harappan excavation. So that area we got a upsidal platform having white clay plastered. Over it we got the 7 lumps of having the multiple food grains. The scientific analysis has already been done and paper published in the international journal. Having 7 lumps of multiple food grains along with the 1 seal and 2 bull figurine and 1 dish on a stand. Over that some animal bones offered. So that has a very good evidence of some ritualistic area, and also we got 1 Havan Kund. So it's a very good evidence for understanding of ritual practice at that time. So yes, the another thing, whether we have the icon worship or not. So there is 2 tradition running parallelly. One is icon worship, another is the worship of nature through Havan, etc. And so if you see the river Saraswati, along with the river Saraswati, there is evidence of Havan Kund in Kalibanga, Binjore and Rakhigarhi also. But apart from that, if you go to the Indus and other side, you got lot of human figurines and the animal figurines also along with the animal. Why this type of segregation is there? Maybe that reason having some worship tradition offering of human figure. All human figurines, you cannot say it's a toy. You cannot say it's a toy. It's an experimental toy. Some of the human figurine having elaborate headgears and ornamentation also. That may have some tradition of Matridevi or something. So icon worship is also prevailing at that time.
Okay.
So we cannot discard that icon worship is not there. But yes, the thought process of icon worship may not having some kind of material which exists at this moment. Maybe the woodcraft, maybe the mud mud icon or something that is not prevailing at all. So some of the structure may have the temple concept also within the settlement, which we are not determined yet.
Okay.
But the possibility is there. So the we are getting very miniature things at this moment. Like for the example, there is lot of bull figurines we are getting in the excavation. All the bull figurines is not for the toy. So large scale of bull figurine if we are getting at this area, so that may be for the offering, because at present if you go many of the places, somewhere they are offering the horses and all that for the worship itself. So that tradition may be, but it's a subjective one for understanding of the context, where we are getting the object, whether that portion, like we told that this is the Binjore having the separate ritualistic area, because that has the upsidal one, the white painted or white plastered one, and very the cluster of everything denoting the certain ritualistic place. So the context is important, okay, and then we have to decide that whether this area is ritualistic or not. So maybe like Jagurat and other thing, we don't have that much of larger
Yes.
building area in this. But it's not likely that some of the structure may be denoting the temple structure. Or
So we have to nuance this concept that Vedic was ritualistic and non-idol, and that idol came on later. It may well be that some of the figurines found could have ritualistic value.
Of course. In my understanding, yes, it's both the tradition continue. Very likely, if you believing that the idol worship is not good, then you are writing the entire book or
Yes.
something. You put your ideology
Correct.
in that book, na?
Yes.
So maybe the Rigvedic text
Yes.
denote his own ideology, which they thought, or which the set of people writing that particular manuscript.
Okay. The other question that comes about the people, the general people, is that first of all we were a very strong trading civilization, and the second one is always that we were very peaceful. So, what your comments on that based on your archaeological finds?
In the larger context, if you see, they are the traders. It's a true. It's a true in the sense, if you see the standardization of weight and measures, standardization of a material culture like ornaments and the beads, etc. It's a standardized in everywhere, in the long area of Harappan. And also the similar kind of material you got in the Mesopotamia and other culture also, which is not available there. Like in the barrel shaped carnelian bead, that's very popular in the other places, and that the particular technology, manufacturing technology, is you can see in the Harappan civilization itself. So the material, actually the material is very good indicator of the region where the quarry is there in the Afghanistan and other places,
Lapis
which is
lazuli,
like the lapis. Lapis is there in the Harappan's domain also. Some of the lapis bead, etc. That the lapis quarry is not available here. Like in the Haryana, there is no carnelian, nothing of chert, etc. That is not there, and also the shell is also not there.
Yes.
But the shell bangle, we are getting shell bangle here. So that obviously they bought from the other place. So they have the very good trade links with each other culture, even not in the Harappan culture itself, but the other cultures also. So the that kind of the tradition or trade linkage we are getting in the material culture in excavation itself.
So one just point to go back to the previous invasion issues, the fact that you have the chariot is inside out rather than outside in, and the DNA. Can we then finally conclude that with regard to the way we lived and the practices that we the way we have emerged, that with regard to us being told that certain things came outside in, how do you establish of course with shells and all that, it's very if it's not there in the natural environment, it's not there, it must have come from outside. But anything else in our civilization, in our practices, that tell us that these sort of things were influenced outside in? It doesn't have to be invasion, but do we have an outside in influence? Do we have an inside out influence from our civilization?
Of course. Because if you have the trade linkage, so the cultural amalgamation is also possible. The earlier days, if you think about the trade, you can think about the camp also. Like even in the smaller pocket, like 300 kilometer or 400 kilometer away, if you come for the another place like Rakhigarhi, another place, you have to stay at least 3-4 months. Even in the later tradition, Varsavas is the similar kind of tradition. During the rainy season, you cannot go anywhere else, so you have to stay there itself and do all type of, so that invite you for the matrimonial alliance also, the cultural amalgamation. So that happened in the earlier period also. There is lot of cultural amalgamation happened in the past. So that brought some outside of material along with them also, that influenced our culture, and also the similarly they bought from our culture to another place. So that is the reason lot of similarity you can see in the other culture also, like the hairpins and the pots and the beads and the ornaments and the lifestyle. So there is the parallel culture always having the very good similarity, because they have the not only the trade and commerce, but they also have some alliances and amalgamation of the cultural.
Now the other aspect was, were we a peaceful civilization? Did we have a standing army? What we are told that we were peaceful, that we were not invaders inside out. So what is from the findings and from the archaeological perspective, to what extent can you corroborate or probably nuance this aspect of the peaceful people?
It's a very subjective issue, but yes, I believe, personally I believe that the Harappans were having a very good army or very good warriors in the culture. Even if you relate the Vedic culture, always praises Indra and all, so they are also a warrior. So how can you segregate that these are the peaceful people, they are not having any of the army or that tradition? Why they have built sort of fortification, huge fortification in the urban settlement? Even in the rural settlement there is fortified city. Why? Whether they protect the only animals or the other, or even they try to protect from the invaders. They have some military system in prevailing at that. So that's a very, very important point. Even you can see in the seals, they have depicted bow and arrows in the within the script itself. Some of the seals having shield and bow and arrow in hand.
Yes.
Okay, so that shows they have the warriors.
Yes.
They have the tradition of the army. Even in the fortification, in the excavation, we got the spearhead, the bone points, lot of sling balls, arrowheads, celt, etc. That has the multiple use. You can also use for the fighting and the defense. If one thing, if you have the defense, you have offense also now.
Yes.
There is no one part at all. So they must have some kind of military system in the particular culture or the defense system. That is the reason they have the very, very intricate defense system in the settlement pattern. Also another indication of that, in the excavation of Sanoli, the early the excavator indicated that the one 8-shaped figure. If you see the 8-shaped figure, they told that this is the symbolic burial. Okay, we try to do the CT scan of that. Then we have identified that this is not a symbolic burial, this is shield. So
even the helmet,
that,
you know, that
even
is
the
also-
helmet, that is indicated that this is the pot. So that always happen
Yes.
because we don't have that mindset
Correct.
for understanding of the other way also.
This was in fact one of my questions, because there are narratives that are very compelling, because we have a strong history, long history, and archaeology, you know, I have seen for myself now the isolation in which the excavation is done. To what extent do these narratives influence your not only the find but the interpretation, the initial interpretation of what you find? Does it play in the back of your mind? Do you have techniques to separate that influence, or are you looking to perpetuate a narrative? How is the skill of archaeology, how does it train you to prevent that influence, so that the objectivity with which you're going to say view this chariot that you found can be virgin, if you understand what I mean? It should not have the influence that I have to prove we were Martian, or no, it cannot be, you know, military because we were peaceful. What is the technique you apply?
Yes, this is a very good question. Actually, we always a prejudice.
Yes.
Before excavation and all that, we are going to excavate a Harappan site sometime according to the surface finding and pottery type, etc. So if you have that kind of early notion in your mind that we are going to something like this, then you misinterpret
Yes.
many things.
Okay.
Archaeologists must have that clue. This is the virgin site, and after excavation, then you try to correlate with the other site, not before the excavation. That so if you have that kind of vision in the excavation, then you fairly justice with your find.
Correct.
So making justice in you, and also you have to have the dare.
Yes.
That we are telling this is okay, or this is as per the logical finding. So logic behind that is very, very important. It doesn't mean ki this type of finding is there in that particular site, so that is a similar kind of finding we are getting. So both are similar. Maybe that is different from the others. Usage is different from the other side. Like for example, ball can be used as a lid. Ball can be used as a ball itself. So that usage is different now. One thing having the different use. Like the chariot can be used for the procession also. Chariot can be used for the war also. So the context is very, very important. We got the chariot, but the size, shape, and other associated things like weapons and shield, the sword and helmet, that denote it's a war chariot.
So you know, it's a good thing that we are talking about the chariot now, because this is something that was a game changer sort of. I mean, obviously a find. So it is very important that you have to follow certain rules in your craft, so that there cannot be a counterclaim that you did this and it was not well done. So what are for the common man, what are the safeguards of context, of protocol, of sanctity of a find, and therefore the excavation, and then the conclusion, so that you can minimize the accusations of contamination? I think that's the word I'm looking for. So if you can tell us through this thing of when this brushing started to make a chariot emerge out of your digs, and you obviously immediately came to know this was something important and special. Can you explain to us the rules of archaeology that you placed on this find, so that the conclusions from this find could not be accused of contamination? Let's take this as an example.
Of course. Yes, it's a very good example for excavation, the technique of excavation, for understanding of excavation, interpretation of the material. Sanoli is the very good example for that. Because the earlier excavation also at Sanoli, we got 116 burial. The similar kind of material was there in that excavation also. But we are not able to interpret them well. So that depend on the excavator to excavator, how they thought and the excavation technique they adopted for that. So excavation is basically scientific destruction. So what we are thinking that the every bit which we are digging or removing from that area, it's a final removal of the evidence.
Okay.
So that very important that if you remove anything from the surface or the excavated area, you just keep in mind that we are destructing the site. So that always remind you to go into very intricate manner. Everything has to be recorded well, either with the photography, with the drawing, or with the filming, or many ways which is available in now.
Yes.
So what we try to do in the excavation, we are not lifting any of the remains there. So we try to correlate. So that is the reason within 4-5 months we have excavated a very small area, because we understand the delicacy of the site, the material delicacy of the site. So the copper remains is a very thin, very corroded one. So if we lift, there is no value at all. So what we evolve and what we try to do, that the every object we left in situ, and then we try to understand the whole shape and size, etc. And then we try to go vertically to see the elevation of it. So that is the reason we got everything in the elevation. Otherwise it's a very difficult to understand at the top, that if you excavate this table, you got only this portion, but what about the leg? If you lift this, the leg is isolated one.
Yes.
So understanding of that, if you find this one, it could be a leg or it could be anything behind below this. So you have to left this, and then you try to excavate the lower portion also. Then you will find the holistic elevation also.
I think the video of the coffins that you found.
Yes. So that's a very tedious task. It's like a craftsman. It's like a goldsmith work. So we have done like a goldsmith work there. So it's a really difficult task. I must say this is the exceptional example of excavation that has not been replicated everywhere. But yes, we must admit that some of the part which excavator think this is very delicate, which has some potential to do the very slow work, he must do the slow work and that area, not everywhere. So that is the reason we try to understand where the pit is there, where the dump is there, where is the in situ structure is there, whether we got the surface level. So that level we try to do very intricate manner, and then whether there is a dump and the secondary deposit is there, we just try to do a little faster. So that understanding, the training of that understanding is very important. So in my student, I try to taught them the similar kind of training, that how you can go for understanding and relate the each structure with the other, and the relation of the stratification also, the in terms of material, in terms of floor level, in terms of the deposition that has, whether it's a wind deposit, whether it's a waterborne deposit, whether it's dumped by the another culture, or whether it's digged by the later people in that portion, whether the through tree root something penetrated inside.
Yes.
So the lower strata, you have you may have some material in the upper portion, but the upper strata material goes inside. Then you thought very carefully that why it's came inside of the lower portion. So the entire understanding of excavation, of stratification, and also the shape of the particular things. Most of the things we are getting in either in the perishable material, so only indication is there. If this is decomposed in situ furniture, only you can get the indication on the mud, nothing else. So that indication you have to point out, that indication you have to mark it out. If you are able to identify that thing, then you will
like the bow.
get like the bow.
Yes.
Bow is the best example of that. Everything is decomposed here, there. Nothing is there. Only that impression is there in the bow. So we try to do some mark by the pin, not with the line, and then we see from the top that yes, this has some particular shape. Then I understand the other material, like we got 4 bone point. Then we understand, oh yes, this is the bow, and the bone point it's an arrowhead.
Yes.
So that correlation, without understanding of the whole kind of material which is lying nearby, you cannot understand whether it's a craft area, whether it's a household area, whether it's a shop, whether it's a industrial area. So there is a lot for understanding of excavation. So excavation is the really a science, and other science, understanding with the other science also, like the paleobotany. We are getting some grains, charred grains, etc. And that science is also important to understanding of the food and the crop of that particular time period. Like the bones, if you have the cut marks in the bones, if you have the wild animals, if you have the domestic kind of animals, or whether that frequency of that particular animal, like you have the most animal like pig, or the wild pig, or the domestic pig, that could give you the holistic view of the food habit of human being also, and also the animal, because animal and the human being are the very having the close relation of food habit and foods. So the study of the other sciences, and also like DNA, and if you got some skeleton, whether that skeleton having some other disease like the bone disease, or the stone, or some fractures in the skull, etc. So that kind of medical or forensic science is also very, very important. Another DNA, if you have some kind of able to extract the DNA, then DNA also tell some of the story of the human being, or migration, or the relation with the other culture also. And like that, the ostrontium analysis of the teeth and bones, also isotopic analysis also tell the food habit and environment. The soil sampling also tell about the climatic condition of that particular region. So likewise, there is several stream we are taking now, the paleo environment and the settlement pattern, the sedimentation. If you have the river nearby, the flood deposition, etc. So archaeology is a multidisciplinary subject. So without understanding of the other aspect of the life, which we are getting some anthropogenic remains at the site, so that has to be taken care by the excavator, and also try to correlate with the other sciences, and then only analysis is not for the annexure of the report,
Yes.
but that has to be taken care by the excavator for the interpretation of the whole cultural aspect of the particular strata, or particular period, particular phase.
So to conclude, I would ask you, because this last question, because when we talk of Harappan, we have extended the extent. We have come down up to Maharashtra, we have come down up to the Ganges, but we have southern India. So in the context of the ancientness of our civilization, the development of our civilization, where is South India in all of this?
If you see the South India, there is a lot of Paleolithic culture is also there, the Neolithic is also there, and the Chalcolithic is also there. So there is also having the continuity of culture. But in terms of civilization or cultural fusion with the South India, that has to be seen a very intricate manner. The most of the site excavated earlier, having now having the different kind of dates coming up, like 1300 BC and 1400 BC of some of the site, and 700-800 BC having the several site like Adichanallur, and the recently excavated the area of Tamil Nadu, etc., in the coastal area also. So lot of dates are coming up. The iron and the copper age and iron age. Sometime maybe, as per my understanding, both the technique coming parallel also. The iron is less, the copper is more. Then the copper is less, iron is more, because we got the technique for making iron. So this parallel development and the fusion, for understanding of fusion, is very, very important, particularly in the coastal region, because the trade and commerce with the coastal region is prevailing in the early era also. Harappans, if Harappans are going to the Mesopotamia through trade, why not the other region of Indian subcontinent or Indian subcontinent? So that has to be looked into very intricate manner. So I'm not discarding anything that the Harappans, after the decline of Harappan, they are say going to gone to the South India and that places. No, there is several dispersal. Several area, they have dispersal in several area. So one is the dispersal. Why I am telling the various dispersal of various reason? Because in every we have to understand the migration process. If any culture decline or disperse from the central core area, like if you see, for example, in Punjab, there is several people in England or in the Canada and other places, but the older people remain in the city. Remain in the city, Punjab itself. Why? So dispersal not happen in one time. It's happened in thousands years or 100 years. So dispersal is a natural phenomena. and also the community wise dispersal. If you have the linkage with the cell industry in coastal region, you are making a cell here itself for final material, but the raw material you are getting from the coastal region.
Yes.
Okay, then when you migrate from here, you do not try to migrate in a different region, because your linkage with the coastal region, you are already getting material from the coastal region, so you can migrate there itself. So if you have the tradition of making copper thing, so you move from that region where you are getting the copper itself, because that is your need, because that is your tradition. You are not able to change your profession suddenly. So the community wise migration happened maybe the earlier also. That is the reason they migrated, the copper smelters or copper tool makers migrated in somewhere in the upper Ganga Yamuna Doab, where they extract the copper from Khetri and the Uttarakhand and other area also. So these are the pattern we have to understand for how one culture migrated or amalgamated with other culture which is already there indigenous. So everywhere there is cultural continuity. So yes, the change of tradition because of the fusion of the culture.
Okay. There is an extant culture and there is
Yes.
reasons for migration, and then there is a fusion of culture.
So that is the reason we have the tradition of Jambu Dipe. That is not isolated one, the one reason.
Correct.
We have the holistic
Yes.
view of that. Because so even in the Ganga Valley, they have some tradition
Yes.
in the Ganga Valley. So they have, if they migrated of the fusion, more fusion happen in the Ganga Valley, the local tradition and the tradition they bought from that amalgamated with each other.
Correct.
So that pattern we can see in the DNA also. That pattern has to be seen in the material culture and tradition also. The similar kind of tradition which you have in the South India, that similar kind of tradition you can see in the North India. Why? Why that tradition is the deep rooted into? If the people is
Separate.
so
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Manjul, for your time and for your explanation. I'm sure a lot of prevailing, narratives and subliminal, subcontext things that always invade the archaeological space will hopefully be clarified with this. Thank you very much for your time, and with that we conclude this session.
Thank you very much. It's a really informal talk, and I think it's a always debatable to have the understanding of the culture, which is not you can fit in the one format.
Yes. True. No, discomfort of not having it in a plain narrative is good. I don't think, especially in the domain of science, we should look for that sort of comfort. We should actually explore the discomfort.
Because it's a dynamic one.
Yes,
na?
exactly.
It's you cannot fit in the one format.
That's true.
Yes, this is within this format.
Yes.
You cannot fit the culture within one format.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.